Hi guys, welcome back. I'm so excited to be with you guys again in our Ask a Dietitian session. Shout out to all the dietitians out there. I know I've met with so many of you guys through this last week, and I know some of you guys will be joining us. So thank you guys so much for all the work that you guys do with our patients and our clients and informing them about nutrition and health and wellness. So so remember guys, as you're hopping on, hi Steve, thank you for joining us. As you guys join, please type in the questions in the chat. That's fine, I'll go ahead and read them. I actually received a few questions from our DM. Remember, you guys are more than welcome to send them over our way if you feel more comfortable with that, or if you're like, I don't want to forget. So go ahead and do that. We sometimes do record these sessions and then just post them for your guys' convenience. So definitely go ahead and take advantage of this half hour of, just like asking a dietitian. So one of our questions that we had from one of our followers was, are macros needed if they're needed to lose weight, right? And I'm guessing what this person meant is, do I need to know my macros, or do I need to follow, some kind of macro setting or anything in order to lose body fat? I'm guessing that's the kind of weight loss that they were talking about. And the answer is no. Macronutrient counting in using applications that use macronutrients as a settings are just one of the many ways in which somebody can create a calorie deficit. Remember that creating a calorie deficit is the only way to really lose weight or body fat, right? Now, I will say that, and I kind of wanted to explain this into a little bit more depth for some of our followers, right? That and first, let me kind of step back. Some of you guys may not know what a calorie deficit is. And so remember that a calorie deficit, all that is eating less calories than what your body is using, right? So eating less calories does not mean eating less food, right? It's just eating foods that have less in calories, right? So that could be composed of many foods. And this is where I feel a lot of people get confused in terms of macro counting, right? Because, for example, let's say an avocado. An avocado is a very healthy food, but it's very high in calories because it is a fat, right? So we want to make sure that we know exactly what we're trying to learn and apply in order to get the results that we're looking for, right? So back to macro counting, right? So a calorie deficit. So let me give you an example of this. So let's say your body needs 2,000 calories in order to stay alive and be active, right? If you consume 1,700 calories, you are now creating a calorie deficit, right? So because of that, you will lose weight. Now, remember, there's 4 different types of weight, and depending on which one you lose, your body will look very differently. So not all weight losses are created the same, if you want to think of it that way, right? So the 4 types of weight that you can lose is water weight. Remember, we human beings are made of about 70% of water, right? You can lose bone weight. So bone weight we automatically lose as we age, right? This is not something that we can do by ourselves to lose bone weight, right? So, and the bone weight that we lose is what we call bone density. And there's actually a very interesting fact about this. So, dark sodas, right? They are one of the only things that we can consume that can actually strip off the calcium of our bones. So be careful with that, right? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't consume it. I'm just saying be mindful and know what they do to your body, because once you lose bone density, you cannot get it back. The only times that we can create more bone density is during puberty, right? And then for women, we actually have a second time in our life where we can actually increase our bone density, and that is during pregnancy, right? So if you're a pregnant woman and you want to increase your bone density, right, to make sure that as you age very healthily, make sure you do some type of resistance workouts. Please consult your doctor, right? Because as being pregnant, there may be some limitations on a case-by-case case, right? So make sure you guys are adhering to what your doctors are saying first and foremost. On that, right? So the 3rd type of weight that you can lose is body fat, right? So this is the squishy stuff that makes us look not as lean and stuff like that. And the 4th one that you can lose is you can actually lose muscle mass, right? Lean tissue. So depending on what you do in terms of how you exercise and what foods you consume, this will yield a very specific effect on how you look. Let me give you an example. Let's think of a marathon runner, right? So marathon runners are a little bit more lankier. If you look at a marathon runner, right, they're smaller in frame in comparison to that of a sprinter, right? A sprinter, right, will just do short bouts of running, and they actually look a little bit more muscular, more bulky, if you want to think of it that way, right? So depending on what they're doing, right, that's what the body will call for in terms of what they need. the marathon runner is going to need to consume more carbs and more fats because those are the primary sources of fuel that is used during that sport, right? Whereas the sprinter will actually need more carbs and protein than that of the marathon runner. So what they eat contributes to how they look. Now, yes, the marathon runner also uses a different, what we call slow twitch muscle fibers, whereas the sprinter uses what we call fast twitch muscle fibers, right? And because of that, they have to eat different foods in order to fuel for their sport, right? But you might be like, Carla, I'm not a marathon runner, but I'm not a sprinter either. How will that affect my body? Well, it definitely still affects your body, right? So let's say I eat mostly carbs and fats and very little protein. I will lose weight, and that weight will be muscle tissue, muscle mass, right? So what happens at this point, this person eating mostly carbs and fats will end up what we call looking as skinny fat. They will still look small in frame, right? But they may not be as defined as somebody who doesn't eat this way, right? So it really depends on how you want to look, right? Remember, it's your body. Like, you decide what you want to do, but it definitely has an effect. Whereas if somebody consumes more, a different types of balance where they're consuming more carbs and protein and maybe a little bit lower on the fats, they might still create that lean look with more muscle definition and more muscle in and of itself. Remember, your muscles are made out of proteins, and proteins are made out of amino acids. So if you're not consuming enough amino acids or enough proteins, right, you're not going to be able to rebuild that tissue that's being torn down. So be very, very mindful. So that's why I say, no, you do not need to know your macro counts in order to lose weight, right? But first you have to define what weight you want to lose, right, to make sure that you're eating for that, right? And then make sure you're eating the foods that fall into that category. Even then, right, you still don't need to macro count in order to achieve a more muscular form or not. So let me give you an example, right? And for some people that may not know macro counting, some people will say, okay, on a daily basis, I need 130 grams of protein, I need 200 grams of carbs, and I need 70 grams of fats, right? That's what knowing your macros are, right? Now, you don't need to do that, right? So in this scenario, if you just want to like, hey, Carla, I just want to go by, feeling full, feeling satisfied. I'm really scared of the numbers, or, macro counting or, tracking things on an app is really tedious for me. That's fine, right? So at that point, what we teach often is what we call the hand guidelines, right? So these guidelines will help you eat this much of protein, right? For some of you guys may have heard this, that in order to consume a good amount of protein at your meals, is not only do you need to eat the circumference of the palm of your hand, but also the thickness of the palm of your hand. So let me give you an example. If I were to have either a piece of fish, let's say tilapia, for example, right, versus a chicken breast, right? My fish is going to be thinner. They're going to be closer to like this part of my pinky, right? They're not going to be as thick as the palm of my hand. In that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that fillet of fish and I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to make sure that it's the circumference of my hand, right? To make sure I eat enough protein. Believe it or not, your hands were made for your body, right? So for the body frame that you eat and to be quote unquote a healthy weight and everything, your hand kind of has everything, kind of given for you. Now we're talking about a palmful of carbs, right? You're like, Carla, well, what fits in here? I don't know how much this is. Well, if you don't want to use measuring cups, right? If you don't want to use any of that, I've actually did this when I was really, really young. And I was like, I wonder how much rice that is. And I literally grabbed some rice, some white rice, and I put it in my hand, and then I cupped it into my plate. And then I analyzed that plate, very in a very close manner. I made sure that the plate was around this big and not like this big, right? So from there I was like, oh, that takes about a third of the plate. So from there on, all I did was consume about a third portion of that plate. And that's what I knew would be the cup of my hand. Now, a cup of my hand, right, is going to be different than a cup of somebody that's 6'3", right? A cup of my hand, that's actually around half a cup of rice, right? So I know this would be a good measurement for lunch or dinner or something like that, right? Now, the fat, right? The fats are a little tricky because we know fats can be in solid form or in liquid form. So let me give you an example of solid fats, right? We have your avocados, right? Your avocados are fats, right? Your liquid forms would be your oils, your olive oil, right? And then there's the viscous ones in between, like peanut butter and almond butter, right? And that point you're how am I supposed to measure a thumbful of fat? Well, a thumbful of fat, believe it or not, is around a tablespoon of fat, right? So we want to make sure that at each meal, you're consuming the right amount of fats. Now, here's where you create the calorie deficit without having to track calories. Okay, let's say for example, in lunch, I'm gonna eat some chicken with some rice, right, and my veggies, right? Well, the chicken, depending on what part of the chicken, it may have some fat or it may not. Okay, so this is where you either double up on fat or you don't double up on fat. So this one's really important to know. So if I'm using a chicken breast has very little fat in it, in which case I'm going to want to add a thumbful of fat. Let's think about like maybe using some grapeseed oil or some kind of oil to cook my chicken breast in. Awesome, I now have my chicken breast cooked in oil, right? My rice in my cardboard plate on that, right? And then my veggies, which nobody ever got fat of a veggie, so I'd say veggies are a freebie, right? So that's how you know. Now, let's say, for example, I'm having a piece of steak. Ooh, let's say like a New York steak, right? New York steak is actually pretty fatty. So to that type of protein, I would not want to add an extra fat to it. So I wouldn't want to add butter to that, because then the calorie content of that meal will increase. So for these people that don't want to macro count, I really teach them and coach them. And here we do have various wellness on which proteins have fats, which proteins are leans, because they can go to the grocery stores and buy different types of meats depending on whether they want to add more fat to them or not. Okay. Now, remember, creating a calorie deficit can be done 1,000 ways, right? I can lower the protein content of a meal. I can increase the fat of a meal. I can lower the carb content of a meal, right? So you can create a lot of different calorie deficits, but remember, what you reduce and what you will increase will have a specific effect on your body part. So if you look at me, and cameras kind of change people, right? So if you actually look at me in person, I'm really tiny, right? I consume my foods are mainly consumed of proteins, higher on carbs, and a little lower on the fats, right? That's because I just want a leaner look. I'm more muscular look, right? And some of you guys may be laughing because you guys know me. You're like, Carla, you're like tiny. What do you mean muscular, right? Like, well, I'm looking more for like defined look that I want, right? So I actually saved some of my snack. I started eating it before jumping on with you guys, but I want to give you guys a real life example of like what I consume. And I often post my foods on our stories. So if you're like, Carla, like how does a more protein and more carb and less low on the fats foods look like, keep an eye on them, because that's what I do, because I do mostly resistance training, right? I do very little cardio. I do some cardio for cardiovascular health, right? But most of my workouts are composed of weight training. Okay, I just love to weight train. So for my snack right before, and I ate most of it, so I try to save something for you guys. so I'll definitely be eating this at the end. So I'm consuming an Oikos Pro yogurt. So I'm not sponsored by them, but maybe I should be. Shout out, Oikos. Maybe you guys can send some products my way so I can share them with my patients and clients. So I'm gonna try to put this in front of the screen. So this is the Pro Oikos one, and this is the 20 grams of protein one. So there's some Oikos out there that are like 15 grams of protein. That's great. I just need a little bit more protein because I actually want to keep the muscle mass that I have right now, right? So, and if I were to want to increase my muscle mass, I might consume like 1.5 of these, or maybe consume just a little more Greek yogurt on some other plates or something like that. You can't really see it because I like kind of took a big chunk of it, but if you guys look at it, there's leftover almond butter that I put in here. All right, so and let me try to scoop some of it out of here and show you guys. So you can see there's leftover almond butter. Okay, and that was just because a spoonful is really easy to consume. So that was my fat. So a tablespoon of peanut butter was like around a thumbful of that, right? And now for my carbs, so the yogurt already has some carbs in it. When you guys are patients with us, we teach you how to label read and label read for your goals, because remember, information is knowledge, right? And all of that is power. But what I tell people is like applied information. That's like your superpower, right? It's once you know about the things that you need to know and then putting them into practice, that's where I feel like most people get lost. So definitely reach out. We would love to help you guys. Remember, all of you guys can set up a 20-minute free consultation with us, with Mom. Okay. So if you guys have any goals or you're like, Carla, I'm a little unsure, please, let us know. And we'll definitely, make sure that you guys get your free consultation. So for this one has, and I'm going to try to put it on the screen right here. It has 8 grams of carbs. I don't know if you guys can see that because it's technically backwards because I'm facing the screen. But so that's great, but that's not a lot of carbs for a snack or a meal, right? Well, this is definitely not big enough for a meal for me. Like if you've seen me eat, I can put some food down, right? But so what I did is I added about half a banana, and it was a large banana, so that's why I half. If it's like a medium or a small banana, I'll definitely have the whole thing. Especially because this is my snack before working out. So after this, I have a patient, and then after that, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the gym. So I definitely want to make sure that prior to the gym, I consume something with not a lot of fiber. Okay, not a lot of people. Hi, Carlos. Not a lot of people may know this, right? But fiber actually stops your body from breaking down the glycogen inside of your muscles for you to work out. So I don't know if some of you guys may have seen that. You're like, oh, I ate not too long ago, but you go to the gym and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm like pushing through and I feel like I'm like this dragging. Your meal might have had too much fiber for the amount of time that you let pass between that and your workouts. So we definitely can coach you guys through that. So like I said, remember, please let us know. We are so here to help. If you guys have questions of that, remember, you can DM your questions. So the third Friday of every month, we'll be here to coach you guys through any questions that you guys have. So for this is my protein, right? My yogurt, my carb, which was my banana, right? And my fat, which was my almond butter, right? So if that's how I knew that I wanted to consume a higher protein, higher carb meal. Now, let me give you an example how you would do the same, but let it be flipped in maybe like a higher fat, higher carb, and lower protein content. Let's say instead of a Greek yogurt, I chose like a nut yogurt, like a cashew yogurt, or like a regular milk yogurt. Those yogurts will have a substantially lower amount of protein in them. Okay, so at that point, like the cashew yogurt would be considered a fat because the cashew is a fat, it's a nut, right? And the milk is considered a carbohydrate because it has a higher amount of carbs than any other macronutrient in that milk, right? So that's why those would be those higher in those two, right? So let's say to that, I added the almond butter, right? So now my cashew yogurt would be almost not like double in the fat, but that's technically how I coach my patients to read it. You're not consuming more fats than you are carbs and then you are protein. Do you see that? So in the sake of for the sake of this example, right? The type of yogurt that I chose was the one that made the difference between my snack was in higher in amounts of protein, carbs, or fat. Okay. Let's say with the regular milk yogurt, let's say I get like a yogurt that's made from 2% milk, right? The content of carbs in that yogurt is going to be around like 18, 20 something grams of carbs. The fat content might be like around 5, and the protein content might be like around like 8 or 5, depending on the type of yogurt, right? So it's not going to be high in yogurt, even if I add the almond butter, because remember the almond butter, right? Made out of almonds, made out of nuts, is a fat. It's not a protein. Almonds have protein in them, but they're not considered a protein. So make sure you guys really, really understand which food falls into the category, because I often see that with my patients that they're like, oh yeah, I added protein to my breakfast, and I'm like, awesome. What did you add? And they're like, I had some almond butter, and I'm like, oh, that's great, but that's considered a fat, right? So making sure that you guys add the right food, the right macronutrient, right, will determine whether you're reaching your goal or not. And remember, I didn't count. I don't know how many calories this is. So actually, let's find out. Oh, this one has 140 calories. Okay, so for this, like I know Greek yogurts are higher in protein, so that's how I was like, I'm not really gonna be worried about the fat. How much grams of fat does it have? 3 grams of fat. Not a lot either, right? So this is definitely going to last me like a good 3 hours, which is great because like I said, after this, I'm going to have a patient and then go to the gym. So like I said, knowing what you guys want to have and knowing what you guys want to do is essential. And remember, you don't have to count calories. You don't have to, track anything. There are actually 3 major forms of like tracking food. You can keep like a food diary or a food journal where you just write down the types of foods, right? And then usually your coach or dietitian, in this case, like this is what we do at Vera's Wellness, is we will go over those foods to help you identify which category they fall in to make sure that you're applying them and eating them in the right order, if you would, right? On the right amount. right? So there's that one. There's the data apps like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, right? Those are for people that, some people love the numbers, right? Some people are like, ooh, I want to see how many, grams of, carbs I've eaten through the whole day, right? Some people really, really dig that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Remember, everybody's different, and everybody, has their own thing, right? And the third one is the palm thing. Some people are like, I don't want to write anything down. I don't, want to know anything. I just want to know. And to those people, we say, yeah, okay, so let's just follow your hand guidelines. Let's just make sure we know which foods fall into those categories, right? So that way you apply them in the right way. And by all means, you don't need to count calories. You don't need to, do anything that you don't want to do. But we definitely, recommend that you work with a specialized professional, because they're the ones that are going to make or break your progress. Because making sure that they know what they're talking about, right? It's essential, right? Trust me, I started in this industry a long time ago, and I've definitely worked with some very talented and knowledgeable individuals. And I've also worked with some people that, pretended to know more than they actually did. And it hurt me in the end, right? So I definitely, in Here at Vera's Wellness, we want to make sure we stay on top of the evidence for you guys, because I definitely want you guys to experience the positive, the amazing side of dietetics, the amazing side of a body composition, where you just walk around and you love how you look. You're like, no matter what I wear, like I feel happy with how I look in the mirror. So so this is what our goal is for you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna put this away. I'll eat that later. The next question was, okay, so this person asked me, why does your weight go up when you start working out? Okay, and I'm going to, and I didn't have time to ask a few more questions to make sure I knew what she was asking and make sure that she was asking. I'm guessing, and this was a woman, by the way. So I'm guessing what she asked, what she wanted to know is, why does your weight on the scale go up whenever you start working out, like doing weightlifting? Okay, and that is a true phenomenon, by the way. Most guys actually get excited for this. A lot of the guys are trying to gain muscle, and they're like, yeah, my 5 pounds, right? And the girls are like, oh my gosh, why did I even work out, right? So here's what happens. Okay. By the way, so your weight goes up because your water weight goes up. Remember, when you step on that scale, that reading, that number that the scale gives you back is the sum of 4 numbers. It's the sum of your bones, and it's the sum of your water weight. It's the sum of your fat tissue and your lean tissue, or your muscles and organs and all of that stuff, right? So when you look at that number, remember, not all of it is fat, right? So don't freak out when you see that number, right? Now, when we work out, we tear down our muscles, right? So I'm going to try not to get too science on here, but I know some people are watching, they love the science behind it, so I'm going to try to give you guys a little bit of both, okay? Whenever you tear a muscle, the repair process of rebuilding that tissue, rebuilding that muscle, requires water, okay? So your body will actually pull water into that area to fix it. A good way for me to explain this is, have you guys ever like rolled your ankle or anything like that? And if you've ever sprained your ankle or roll your ankle, like I used to be a soccer player, right? So it gets swollen. Well, that's your body's way of building its own cast, saying, yo, don't move this until I fix it, right? The second reason is because water gets recruited to that area to rebuild tissue for protein synthesis, the rebuilding of muscle, the rebuilding of protein tissue, okay? Once that is done, just like when you rolled your ankle or you sprained your ankle and the swelling, the water goes down. By the way, swelling is water trapped in that area, if you were wondering, okay? The swelling goes down and your body then gets rid of that water. Our bodies are super cool, by the way, guys. I get kicked out on the physiology. I love understanding the human body. So yeah, so that's what happens when you resistance train. When you're resistance training, right, you're essentially causing micro tears in your biceps if you do a bicep workout, in your legs if you're doing a leg workout, right? Whatever muscle group you're working out and you end up sore in, you've caused a micro tear. Well, water is going to get recruited into that area, right? Until it gets fixed, and then your body will get rid of it. So that's why your weight usually kind of goes up when you first start working out, right? And this will also be true throughout the rest of your life. The more advanced a person gets in terms of training, the more efficient their body gets at repairing things and letting go, right? So this is why for newbie trainees, right, they see that water increase, and it actually may stay up for like up to like a week to up to 2 weeks, right? Depending on the height of the individual. That has a lot to do with it, right? So at that point, right, we want to make sure that they don't freak out. We explain to them, hey, this is what's going on. Some people have taken the what we call biometric impedance devices. So those are the ones that if you guys go to like GNC or NutriShop or something like that, and they have you hold on the thing, or they have you step on a scale, or on a scale where you hold on to something and it gives you like your body fat percentage, your water weight, and all that stuff, you will see the water weight go up or down as well when somebody resistance trains. So the biggest and one of like my most amazing things to teach people is when we look at those things, or whether they get like a DEXA scan too, right? And I'll say, hey, notice how yes, you went up, but nothing went up except for your water weight. And they're like, oh my gosh, my scale didn't tell me that. I was like, I know, that ish can't be trusted, right? So there's a proper way to utilize the scale, right? And that's another thing that we do teach you guys here at VRS Wellness, right? But just note that knowing what you're reading, right, knowing where that information is coming from is really essential for us not to freak out. Because I definitely have had patients and clients in the past that prior to working with us, they're like, Carla, I started working out, I didn't see any weight loss, and then I stopped because the scale didn't go down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you were like around the corner of seeing progress, right? So that's one of the reasons why one of the main things that we do here at Various Wellness is we measure people's body fat percentage, right? We either measure them ourselves to come over to our facilities and we do that for them. Or what we also do is if they live far away, let's say in another state, because I see patients from like the East Coast, we find ways for them to have access to other facilities, right? Or I know a lot of people, we've gotten so creative, like with some, I have a few college students up in Oakland, they actually go to a GNC store nearby and they get their stuff measured there. So once again, we will definitely work in whichever area you're in, we'll make it work. So, distance, anything is not an obstacle for us to help you guys. But yeah, understanding why that weight goes up, will help you understand that in fact it will come back down again, right? So a lot of our clients see that as they get more advanced in their training, the turnaround time for that is pretty quickly. I'm a very advanced trainee. I started weightlifting when I was like, I want to say, like, how old are you in like in 10th grade? Like 13, no, you're older than that, right? Like 14, 15, something like that, right? So at that time, it took me a long time to, I didn't even measure my weight at that point. But now it takes, my weight actually doesn't fluctuate by much. The only time where it will really fluctuate, like up or minus, like 1 or 2 pounds, is if I try a new workout and I'm a little extra sore for like, longer than I'm usually are, like, maybe like 2 or 3 days as opposed to like 1 or 2, right? Or whenever I'm trying to gain muscle mass, right? Because there's been times where I like say, hey, I want to increase my muscle mass in this area or whatnot, and my weight goes up substantially. The last thing that I will say that will cause a huge water weight increase, and I know because I did it last year and it worked, right? And I got super stoked too because I was trying to gain muscle at that time. I'm like, yeah, my 5 pounds. And I was like, Carla, it's water weight. So I was like, well, whatever, I'm sucking myself out, right? Is when I took creatine monohydrate. So there's a lot of research that has been done that yes, creatine monohydrate does help with not with muscle building, but with the availability of what we call ATP. So if you guys have any questions on that, let me know, because that's a whole nother topic that I can get into. But yes, creatine monohydrate, when utilized for the first 1 to 2 weeks, it will cause a big water weight increase in you because your body's getting used to it and whatnot. So that's the only time when I'll see my weight go up for like 5 pounds, right? Outside of that, I hope that by the end of my weight increase process, I'm up by like 2 pounds at the most, because I'm an advanced trainee, and the longer you've been weightlifting, the harder it is to gain muscle mass. So you newbies out there, you guys, I am so jelly of you because I'm definitely going to be trying to increase some muscle at the end of this year during the holiday season. So, well, this is it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation today. Remember, if you guys have any questions, please DM us so we can answer them. Once again, you guys are more than welcome to put them in the chat during our session. I hope this helped you guys. And I'll see you guys next month. Stay tuned for all of our updates and stuff like that. And please let us know how we can help you guys, because after all, this is your channel. This is your page. We're just here to help you guys out. Have a wonderful day.